Happy Sunday! I'm the supplier, and this is Sunday Bookstack for the week of November 10, 2013. So today's video comes to you in 5 parts. Part 1, t-shirt. I got an OK t-shirt from Barnes & Noble. One of my friends picked it up for me because it was on clearance and she works there and she gave it to me on Friday night. And so I thought I would show it to you today. It is made of awesome. Part 2, since we're moving right along, is the results from last week's white space video. Last week I talked about audiobooks, and you guys talked to me about audiobooks, and my students talked to me about audiobooks, and the general consensus was that listening to an audiobook is not, in fact, reading. There were some really kind of interesting answers, one of which was when listening to audio while reading along with the book on Kindle. One of you all read ahead. What's the point of the audio if you're reading ahead of the audio? Just curious, tell me why, because I couldn't reply to you after they changed the comment feature. Now, 5 of my students, out of the 20 or so that took the poll that I set up, said that listening to audiobooks was in fact reading, but when I looked at the reason why, they said because they were reading along with the text as they were listening, and that's really interesting to me. It's really interesting because they've been trained to think, okay, if I'm listening to the audio, I must read along. As opposed to, listening to the audio for the sake of listening to the audio. Part 3 is Kindle Matchbook, and since I'm running a little long, I put a link in the description to the blog post that I wrote last week about my opinion of Kindle Matchbook and what they did. Go check it out. Part 4 is a story about one of my students. This particular student is currently reading Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick, and he chose this book because it had a lot of pictures. And, okay. He's one of the kids who I tend to fight with on a fairly regular basis to get him to read. So on Friday morning, because I have him first period, he's reading through Wonderstruck, and after independent reading time, we have this conversation. And he says to me, "Miss, this book is really easy to read, except for the pictures." Now, this is interesting, 1, because he chose the book because of the pictures, and 2, it made me think about what we are teaching and what I am teaching my students about how to navigate visual text. Now, I think we take for granted sometimes that students are bombarded with images and then assume that they can navigate images and video better than they can navigate print text because they spend so much time engaging with this media. But what this conversation brought forward to me was, I've got to teach my kids how to read images. I've got to teach my kids how to infer from images, especially when the image is all you get to tell the story or all you get to give people information. That isn't to say that I haven't taught images, but I've taught images from, advertisements and images from, the things that, cartoons, the things that they look at on the internet. They're learning how to read graphic novels in their English classes this year. But reading a graphic novel and understanding how the graphic novels are put together is different from reading the images in picture books. So that was really interesting and something that I really need to think about in terms of how I present material to my students in the future. And now part 5, which is this week's, the next 2 weeks worth of Bookstack. I finished all the books that I planned to read, and I finished Yaki Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass, which was awesome, and then some, and I finished it and immediately handed it to one of my students in my 3rd hour class, and that was the book she needed. The right book at the right time? That was the book she needed in the last, 3 days. She's been, during independent reading time, which is, very exciting. For me as her instructor, I'm glad that I found a book that she's, interested in. I definitely think that it had to do with the fact that the word ass is on the cover, but that's what I predicted. I am reading a book about designing multiplayer classrooms, and it is awesome, and I'm reading it because I wanted to help me make the game that is my class better. I'm really excited about it. I'm about halfway through. I'm also reading Reality Boy. That was one of the books I picked up last week once I finished Yaki Delgado, but I left it at school this weekend. Which was kind of annoying when I was taking a break from grading yesterday and I wanted to read and I didn't have the A.S. King to read. By the way, Everybody Sees the Ants was awesome, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. So because I left Reality Boy at school this weekend, I picked up Freak Boy by Kristen Elizabeth Clark, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's about a kid who is trying to find himself on the transgender spectrum, because it is a spectrum, it's kind of an umbrella term. It's a novel in verse and it's told from 3 different points of view, which I didn't know before I started. Brendan, the main character, he is the one who is trying to find himself, as well as from the point of view of his girlfriend Vanessa, and from the point of view of a girl that Brendan meets named Angel. Yeah, I'm only about a third of the way through, but it's amazing so far. I'm loving it, and yeah. Anybody's got thoughts, if you've read it or going to read it, let me know. I will talk to you about it, because I really want to talk to somebody about this. I am also going to pick up August Moon. It is a graphic novel that I got from Top Shelf when they were doing their sale. I don't know anything about it at all. I'm also going to read Unlondon. Yay for Unlondon. Which Emma says is a little weird. But I'm good with weird. I'm good with different. I'm fantastic with different. They're dancing dustbins on the cover. So, yay. Again, I've had a couple of people talk to me about this in various places. Read with me. Tell me what you think as you go. And finally on my stack for the next 2 weeks is Red Glove. I decided to go ahead and pick it up. It's been on my TBR next to my bed shelf, not the TBR in my office shelf, for quite some time now. I read White Cat and I enjoyed it, so we're moving on to Red Glove. So that is it for me today. What are you guys reading this week, or what thoughts do you have on what I am reading for the next 2 weeks? And I will see you in the comments soon. Until then, I am Supplier, wishing you happy reading. Don't forget to be awesome.